I want to tell you a story about two different producer mixer engineers and how the way they chose to work drastically affected their quality of life. Now, George Martin, the fifth Beatle, let's talk about him for a second. He went deaf at the end of his career completely. In the 70s, he was going deaf. So, relatively early on in his career, he started to have huge hearing issues, and it was a big result. Probably genetics had a lot to do with it, but also the fact that he loved to listen super loud. It's documented that he listened to music extremely loud. Now, for all of you guys out there who love the way that feels, just know that that's a potential future for anybody who loves the way loud music sounds and insists on mixing for hours and hours and hours and hours a day at very high volumes. All right? Another guy, Elliot Shiner. Elliot Shiner worked with Steely Dan. He did tons of the 5.1 stuff. He's actually the reason 5.1 surround became a thing in cars. Acura was the first company to sort of take that up and put a surround system in a car. Now all cars have surround systems, and it's basically because of this guy. His credits span the gamut also. Crazy huge career. I could list the credits right now, actually, just so you guys know who I'm talking about, because the Beatles are such a name that it's easy to understand who George Martin is. Not a lot of people know who Elliot Shiner is. So he produced and engineered a range of artists from the Foo Fighters, Toto, Jimmy Buffett, Beck, Faith Hill, Steely Dan, Band of Horses, Ricky Martin, Sting, Bruce Hornsby, Paul Simon, REM, B.B. King, George Benson, Shaka Khan, Van Morrison, Donald Fagen, Fleetwood Mac, Queen, Eric Clapton, Jackson Brown, Eagles, Aerosmith, Joe Jackson, and Glenn Frey. Now, there's tons more stuff on here. He did the Fish, the Complete Baker's Dozen box set. That was basically a live 13-night performance thing. He remixed that in 2018. He did the Eric Clapton Crossroads 2013 live show at Madison Square Garden. He remixed that. So the guy's done tons of stuff. His preference of how he likes to work is very low. He talks about 45 dB, which is really low. And that's how he mixes almost the entire time. I think he says he never checks it loud. He only checks loud on when he's doing any kind of surround type mixing. When he's doing typical stereo mixing, he mixes low all the time. Now, this is the two polar opposites. And let's just say, no problems with his ears. He had other problems that were health related that severely, he nearly died. And he also had, hundreds on hundreds of visitors in the hospital who were really close friends of his, which really speaks to his character. And basically, his son played a Marvin Gaye song, Sexual Healing, and he came out of a coma because of it. So you want to talk about how music can really affect someone's life? Let's just sprinkle that in there. I mean, talk about life changing, right? So something about cerebral hematomas is what he was dealing with, right? But nothing to do with music. This was just what happened in life to him for health reasons. Nothing to do with the fact that he was making music. Now, he still works. He still can work. He can hear. The guy is his ears are in great shape because he made a choice at some point to listen low. Now, this is something else you have to realize. Everyone works different. Some people can work at low volumes because their ears might be either more sensitive or they just practiced that way and realized that they like it better. I am actually in that camp. I started mixing low and I grew to become comfortable with it. At first, I wasn't very comfortable with it. I got more comfortable with it over time, and now it's my preference. Now, I will often check the mix loud also because I'm somewhere in the neighborhood of I mix 90% of the time at a very moderate quiet volume, 10% of the time loud. The rest of the time, it's always low. So when you get that sort of thinking, I'm thinking about this multiple ways. One, it works for me. If it didn't work for me, after trying it and practicing it and really giving it a chance, that's what I want everyone to do. Don't just throw an idea out because you tried it once or twice. When I started mixing in the box after coming off of working hybrid, I was extremely disappointed with the results, and I just couldn't wrap my head around the fact that it would even be possible to be happy. And that's when I realized that all the guys who think it's impossible to mix in the box probably have been mixing other ways for 40 years, and then they've spent 4 weeks or 4 months mixing in the box, and they wonder why they can't do it, or why it's not possible, or why they can't get whatever, because they haven't put nearly the same amount of time into trying to make the other one work. So you can't just try it for a day or two. There's a reason why people get a huge benefit out of mixing low. It takes a lot of if your room ain't perfect, it takes a lot of that out of the equation. It also sort of forces you to lean in to kind of hone your ears in a way, and it prevents your fatigue. The ear fatigue just doesn't happen. I mean, you could work way longer without the problems that you would experience if you tried to work super loud for a long time. Now, let me also say, in the same way that I know this works for me, some people might have the type of ears that can handle getting blasted and be fine. That's never been me. When I was a young kid and I started playing in my first band, I noticed I heard ringing in my ears after like the first few weeks of practicing. I heard a ringing. And that's when I knew I was like, I got to deal with this because this could create a problem down the line. Now, some people I know, who are my age playing in bands, never wore earplugs, never have ringing in their ears. So there's a genetic thing there where some people's ears are more sensitive than others. It's also a question of what can you stand? Like how much zoom, if you were to picture it like zoom on a camera, how much, and I did it like this, it's funny instead of zoom on a camera, but like a real camera zoom, how much you got of that in your ears? Do you got the kind of zoom in your ears where you could actually work low or not? Or do you need it blasting at you so that it makes you feel something? A lot of people need to feel the low end while they're mixing. So they have to turn up. They really have no choice there because they need that. And I want to feel something from the mix when it's quiet. That's the difference there. For me, it's like I will feel something if the mix sounds great when it's quiet, but I'm capable of feeling that. Like I don't need to have the room shake. I can get there. That might be a mental thing, and it also just might be a sensitivity thing. Certain compressors or plugins, it's like if you crank the sensitivity up too much, now all of a sudden it sounds distorted or whatever. Well, I get there way quicker than some people, I guess. I need that to be chill. Everyone's different. So there's no right or wrong, but figuring out who you are is a big thing. And then realizing that anything that's great will ultimately at some point cause you to pay some kind of price. That's why there's not just the ability to just indulge in everything we want to indulge in and all the pleasures, because ultimately that leads to unhappiness. You can't just have fun all the time or take the drugs or drink the stuff that makes you feel like you just can't do all the stuff you might want to do every day. As a result, if you do, you're going to pay the price. So some of that to me also is, sure, it feels great to listen to music super loud and feel it, but you pay a price for that over time. And not being able to hear would be the worst price that you could possibly pay if you love to do this as much as I do and as much as you probably do. Right now, when I hear ringing in one of my ears, a lot of the time from a kind of a trauma thing that happened to me while I was building my last studio, and I talked about that in a past video, so I don't want to really get into it at the moment. But the point is, a thing went off next to my ear that was very loud to set this thing into cinder block. And as a result, I constantly hear ringing ever since. And some days are better than others. Sometimes it's louder, sometimes it's lower. But a lot of me working the way I do prevents that from being an issue the way with my work completely. Whereas if I work loud, I notice it starts to kick up and I can hear that ringing way worse. So a lot of what I do is preventative to make it where I can continue to work for as long as possible without having any issues. So I just think the more mature you get, the more you realize that it ain't just about making stuff loud. Some people refuse to wear earplugs when they play because they want to feel everything. Well, you pay a price for that. So maybe it's worth it to you. For me, it's worth it to maintain as much of my hearing as possible for as long as possible. So, I love what George Martin was able to accomplish, and it's amazing. And then his kid, Giles, takes time to discuss on the Pure Mix channel. It's a great kind of hearing long interview where they basically talk about all the problems his dad had as a result, how he used to have Giles come to sessions to be able to kind of tell him what people were saying so that he could get away with not hearing them. Really crazy stuff. Wearing his, hair and everything over his ears to cover the fact that he had hearing aids in. Like, just all sorts of stuff to be able to just get through the day because he had to listen super loud all the time. Man, with the knowledge we have, we should be smarter with it. So my goal is to just kind of impart as much as I can so that some people out there don't make all those mistakes, because young engineers do that all the time. Mark Daniel Nelson talked about when he was younger, he felt he had to turn up super loud. It was the only way he could get things to be good, or, he had to. It was part of it. And then he realized that's not the case. It took him a long time to get there, and he got there. He didn't need to have everything blasting at him. So everyone comes at this differently. Andrew Sheps talks about how he mixes low and loud. He does both. Some people do both. Andy Wallace talked about the fact that a lot of the time, especially vocal balance and things, he likes to work low, but he'll turn up to make sure there's nothing annoying, because without that, if you work quiet all the time, you can't hear annoying, according to him. So everyone has different preferences, tolerances, and preferences. What did I say? Preferences, tolerances, and preferences? Well, that's because preferences is twice as important, because your preference is going to dictate what you do. But just be prepared for the future of whatever choice you make. There is going to be a consequence. And if you can work low, there's huge benefits, because there's really no negative or downside. You can do it in a place where you won't upset your neighbors. You won't upset your ears. You could work longer hours. Your ears don't start to do that thing where they basically compress. Anytime I go to a live show, I bring earplugs. I was at a wedding the other day for a great friend of mine. Earplugs. I busted them out as soon as the DJ started doing his thing because it was painful. Nobody knows how to EQ anything at these parties. So the DJ starts getting on the mic, and all you hear is and a ton of high end. Totally muffled city and a ton of high end. And I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's not a freaking ounce of treatment in that whole, ballroom type of room. It's so funny how it's like made for a party, and sound is just not a factor. They don't think about it at all. So anyway, but what a painful situation. I put those in, and everybody at the table who saw me do what I was doing, was like pissed they didn't bring theirs, a lot of them, because a lot of the people at the table happen to also be musicians. So everyone's on the same page here. It's like, why ruin your hearing for all these ridiculous nonsense things? I don't leave home without that stuff, which, might mean I'm getting older. I think it's smarter. I don't know. In my opinion, you guys make your own decisions. I just got to give you all the facts. So I hope you dug it. Questions, comments, answers, other stories. Maybe you've experienced something similar or whatnot. I'd love to hear it. Talk to you guys soon. Evan Jaffe, Custom Cut Studios. You guys got this. Take it easy and be safe.